Welcome to the third episode of Death Taxes Acid. Today I am sharing a conversation with Nick Musica, an animal communicator. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to Nick share his experiences with animals, and I have no doubt that these are relatable in some form or another to anyone who has pets or who likes animals. Please enjoy. Okay, Nick, thanks for joining me today. Looking forward to this one. This should be an interesting one. Let's jump right in and let's start with the easy stuff. Your professional background, please.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Shay. So my
Yeah,
professional background is digital marketing. I've been in SEO since 2003.
yeah.
I run my own little agency here in San Diego, working with small businesses, working with them on their websites, web design, SEO for the purpose of getting visibility in Google, so people can click on the sites and spend money on e-commerce or lead gen or whatever it is. But it's all under the guise of digital marketing, but we're here to talk about something slightly different.
Yeah. Let's give me like an overview of your story,
Yeah.
your history of use with psychedelics, and the journey to animal communication, which is the main theme today. And
Yeah.
give me the broad overview and how did psychedelics play, what role did it have in getting you to this?
To this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about we jump in with the how the animals showed up, and then
Okay. Yeah.
we'll get into the psychedelics.
However you
Yeah.
want to do it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it was about coming up on 2 years in March. My wife and I went to this psychic fair in Carlsbad, California, where we live.
Okay.
And we were walking the show floor. We walked around it, didn't see anyone we liked, and then we decided to approach the floor from the opposite direction. Right in front of us was this woman, this young lady, and it said psychic medium, medium Adelita. That's her name. And I thought she'd be good. I thought she'd be good for my wife. And I said, "Hey, Joel, what do you think about her?" And my wife said, that sounds great. Why don't you go first?" So I sat down with medium Adelita for about 15 minutes.
So just
And
quickly, sorry, I have a question about what
yeah,
is it about a psychic where you're like, I'm not feeling this one, but I'm feeling this one,
I couldn't even I couldn't even tell you in this case. It was like she
Okay.
was right smack dab in front of us, and she was the only one that sort of made sense.
Yeah, okay. She's maybe sending out some
A
signals to
little,
you.
yeah. I mean, there's like a little like just like this draw, right?
Yeah.
Like everything
Yeah.
else was sort of flat,
Yeah.
and she was like something interesting about her,
Okay.
right?
She had Nora.
She had an aura.
All right.
Well, yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah.
Cool.
So I sat down with her, and she started the session by drawing this heart.
Okay.
And she says, and I've never been to a psychic meeting before, and it really wasn't in my list of things that I believed in. Psychics, yes. Psychic mediums just wasn't my thing. Mediums being they talk to beings, creatures that have passed.
Yeah.
And so I sat down. She starts by drawing this heart. She says, "This is either a former romantic relationship or it's an animal." And she circles animal, and she says, "You did too much. The message is you did too much." And I was like, okay, so this is my cat who lived to be 22 years old. The last 2 years of his life on the planet were spent going back and forth to the vet, checking the food, blood work, all the things you can do to ease the symptoms of old age for a cat, right? A lot. We did a lot. And so the summary of you did too much was spot on. And as I'm going, oh man, like this is what's happening, and I'm having a conversation with my cat through this woman, and like shedding very quickly my disbelief of psychic mediums. She continues and she says, "So now they," and when a psychic says they, they're referring to their spirit guides. She says they are now showing me uh Dr. Dolittle. They're showing me that you can talk to animals. It's going to be easy for you.
Okay.
And here's what she didn't know, like going into it, was besides Henry, like the background on Henry, the cat that I just
Yeah.
mentioned. She didn't know that the prior August, like 5 months, can't do the math, 5 months prior, I ended up in the hospital with a bone infection. My little girl cat reacted to me. She hit my bone. I ended up in the hospital for 4 days. Um, and that following month in September, we were out to eat with a friend, and she mentioned that she had a um, was like a holistic health um, business in Colorado, and this animal community. She called this animal communicator who actually worked there to work with her dog, and had no idea this thing existed. This thing called animal communication, and which is intuitively or psychically talking to animals. And so I was tickled about just like it being a real thing. And so I was obsessing about this book, right? So when she said it's an animal, and you're going to talk to animals, I'm like, this is sort of hilarious that I was really just like in a hospital a few months prior because of a bone infection because I did not properly communicate with my little girl cat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then a month later, I'm learning about this animal communication book, and I thought it was the best thing in the world. And everyone that I said something to about this book, I mean, their reaction was not as exciting as mine. Let's just put it that way, right? They're like, "That's we're really happy you found a book, but that you like, but mm-mm." So so I get this information from Adelita, and she gives me a bunch of other information too about animals, and so I decided to give it a shot. So I come home and I do my regular meditation that I've been doing since 2017, off and on this meditation, and I decide I'm gonna tune into my living cat Chucky. Let's see how this goes. And so do the meditation, try to find Chucky, and I see this bright light that shows up. And it's the type of light that if you read these spiritual books, it's like associated with like a spirit guide or angels or high level beings, something like that. And my first thought was, this is not my cat. All right,
Okay.
this is not it. My cat shits in a box. Sometimes he shits on the floor. He's not a high level being, right? He's just
Right.
not.
Right.
So I call up Adelita and I said, easy, like this isn't even working. Like what, like, mm-mm. And she said, well, you're expecting things to show up in a very specific way. It's not how this works. Just be the channel for the information. What you get is what you get. And that's about it.
Uh-huh.
Right. So like simple enough. So I decided to give it another shot. And I buy a bunch of animal communication books and I get a couple animal communication sessions with folks who do this for a living
Okay.
to try to figure out anything about this. Like, how does it work? What does it look like? I have no idea. Like, if I'm supposed to do this, I should probably have a clue, right? And so, as I'm about to stand up to go to one of these animal communication sessions on Zoom, just like this, I get up from my dining room table to walk to this office, and I get this quick flash, and I see this scene in Return of the Jedi. It's the ghosts of Obi-Wan and Yoda,
Mm-hmm.
and I realize I'm being shown this student-teacher relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that this is coming from Chucky, right, my
Okay.
living cat,
Okay.
which makes that bright light like that was his introduction to me,
Okay.
right? So I get on the line with this animal communicator, and she's like, "Okay, we're here to talk about Chucky, 30 minutes or whatever." She validates the information, and then she goes right into it. She goes, "Do you know who he is to you?" Like, mm-hmm, yeah. And now we start talking about what I saw and what she saw, and I get validation from her, and that turned into a thing. So much so that the site that I use for this work is mycatschooled.me.com because
Okay.
he's given me quite a bit of
Okay.
interesting information. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, first of all, has the cat seen Star Wars? Like, was that image sent from you, sent from
Yeah,
the cat, sort of thing? Or is it like
yeah,
your interpretation was something, a point of reference that made sense to you, if you know what I mean?
yeah. It's a yes and right. And so the way
Okay.
that you'll get communicated with is with things that make sense to you.
Okay.
So right, so everything he's given me makes sense to me.
Okay.
When I'm talking to someone else, I could get something completely random and I have
Yeah.
no idea what it is, right? And I really need to be okay with saying something like, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Right. So I was talking to a young lady about her dog, and like the dog was just like giving me a laundry list of things. And and it came time for like some things I was a little uncomfortable to say. I'm like, this is like, but my job is to just get the information, give the information, right? That's my job when I'm doing these things.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to the woman, and she's had an animal communication session before, and it's like I'm trying to soften, like, is this going to work or is this not going to work? And she's like, just say it. And I go,
Okay.
okay, popcorn. And she goes, I don't eat popcorn. Okay, that fell flat. So what about Wheel of Fortune? And there's silence. And then she starts dying laughing. And she says, we watch it every night together.
Wow.
And as a matter of fact, we had popcorn a couple weeks ago. I bet he had some. It's like super trippy,
Wow.
right? Because I don't
Damn.
always get something that can be that's evidence of the 3D world. Sometimes it's like it's different
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
conversations,
yeah.
right? Like I can't prove there's nothing other than my feeling around to myself around that Star Wars thing, right? But I don't randomly like have a list of game shows that I pick one out of the hat every time I talk to
Right.
someone. That
Right,
doesn't
right,
it doesn't happen.
right, right. So, like, walk me through the process of like establishing that connection, unless you already did that, meaning like the meditative state and then the light shows up.
Yeah,
That's how it happens. And then
yeah.
a conversation. So it's not, I'm guessing it's not like human language being exchanged. Like there's not English, or is it like an energy coming your way that you have to do your best to interpret or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. So let's walk through like the basics
Yeah.
of the connection,
Okay.
and then we'll get into like what does it sort of look like when you start to get information.
Okay.
Okay, because people are probably have these types of things happening, and they dismiss them, or they call themselves crazy, or it
Yeah.
is crazy, or coincidence, or all these things, right? And
Yeah.
so there's like nothing you can do with crazy. There's nothing you can do with coincidence. It's very dismissive.
Yeah.
But when you're getting information and you start to see the bits and pieces that show up, you now have like universal breadcrumbs that you're picking up, and you can build
Okay.
something off of that,
Yeah.
right? And so here's a rhetorical question for
Yeah.
whoever's listening. Have you ever had the experience, and let me know, have you ever had the experience of thinking about someone and then you get a text from them or you get a
Yeah.
phone call from them, right?
Yeah. Of course.
Or vice versa. Oh man, I was just thinking about you.
Yeah.
Funny you called, right?
Yeah.
Like that's at the very basic level. Like
Yeah.
that's the little knock on the door,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so we all have access to this thing. It's just a matter of like how does it show up for everyone,
Yeah.
right? So for me, it just happened to show up for animals,
Okay.
and I have a theory around why that happened, but we can get into that later.
Okay.
So in terms of like, well, what does it look like to connect? It's for me, it's a very basic meditation. There's a grounding element. You shake off the energy, like shed anything that you're carrying, get your feet flat on the floor, do a grounding, and then there's an activation of the chakras. You open up the crown, and that's the connection with source. And then from there, it's for me, I'm actively the intention to find the animal happens, right? And then there's typically, like you said, like, is there a feel to it? There's typically a feel that shows up, and that's the connection. Like I can pick up, okay, so now we're connected because I'm looking for it, right? I'm looking for it up in here. And then the connection happens, feel the connection. It's almost like a little bit of like a this happens, right? Because I'm over here and the animal's over here, and then that happens. Right. There's a blending that happens. There's the connection that happens.
So you
So
don't
once
need physical presence. Like you can just be like on the screen, right? Because
from
you do this
anywhere.
on Zoom. Okay.
Yeah, from
That's
anywhere. Yeah,
cool.
it's actually really distracting to do it in person because I'm
Is that
all
right?
about like yeah, for me it is because it's very like very 3D and I want to pet the dog and I want to throw the ball. Like that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for me. Not that we'll talk about the dolphin, not that this hasn't happened in person. It certainly does. Um, but it's a hoot just to play with the animals. You know, I'm a
Right.
10-year-old little boy at heart. Like I just
Yeah,
want to play
yeah,
with the animals, right?
yeah.
So when I'm connecting with them, it's all remote, all of it.
Okay.
Um, and so I'll typically connect with the animal like on a Wednesday, and then I'll talk to the human and have the download and the debrief with them on like a Friday, right?
Okay.
Because it's really clean when it's just me and the animal. I'm not managing anything else other than the communication of myself,
Okay.
right? And so then to answer your question, like, well, how does it show up, right? So if you're to look for the psychic clairs, CLAIRS online, it's like all of our senses in a psychic form. So like you can hear things, you can see things, you sort of hear things. Sometimes I hear things, sometimes it's my voice, sometimes it's a different voice. I mean, I've heard like Boston accents coming from animals. I've heard very interesting things, just like the
Wow.
tone. Yeah, like chihuahuas, sort of like if you can imagine how they sound. If you know a chihuahua, like they're a little loud and they're in your
Yeah, I
like
know them.
that's exactly how they show up for me anyway, at least today.
Yeah.
Um, and you can see things like there's a screen that shows up, and sometimes it's a flash of an image, sometimes a little bit of like a snippet of a movie that shows up. Sometimes I'll get a feel of something, right? Like, is there something going on with the stomach? Like I'll get a pinch or something like that.
Okay.
And for me, um, I hear songs. I hear songs frequently. So there's a young lady I was talking to a while back, and the whole conversation was like about health, was about taking care of yourself. And so some of the guidance I gave her was like, if you come home after work, you're probably a little hot, like with the stress of work type of thing, emotionally hot. And you come in the door and your dog's like sensitive to you not taking care of yourself. So if you're coming home from work to home, like you should have a conversation of I'm going to the gym in 5 minutes. Like there's nothing to be concerned about. If you come home from the gym, you don't come home hot. And she's like, yeah, all these things are true. Yeah. So like that's okay. Like there's nothing for the dog to manage here. But when you come from home from the work, like you got to have that conversation. I'm taking care of myself. And that should ease the dog. Because why is the dog so anxious when I come home? Well, here's why the dog's so anxious, right? And then at the end of our time together, I started to hear a song, and I'm like, what's the connection here with Bruce Springsteen and like Born in the USA? And she's like, well, not the song, but when I was married, uh, my husband for whatever reason treated me sort of like his little brother, and we would wrestle, and it got a little out of hand sometimes, and we decided we needed a safe word, like to break, and that safe word was Springsteen.
That's hilarious.
Right? So you're
Wow.
like, oh, because like it makes no sense to me when it shows up.
Right. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So the San Pedro, what was the role
Oh
with the
yeah.
San Pedro?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I had a few experiences in my 20s with chemical mescaline, with LSD,
Yeah.
with mushrooms. And then we'll fast forward to 25 years later, and a buddy of mine calls me up and he says, "You're coming on Saturday, right?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "Well, I told you if my guest couldn't make it, that you said you would come." And I had no recollection of this conversation, really. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And the more he explained it to me, the more I'm like, all day, like how many people and like a cactus, like I don't know. And and at some point he said, why don't you just come? You'll like it. Okay, all right. And so I was comfortable with the chemical, right? I always enjoyed psychedelics. It was like a
Yeah.
handful of times in my 20s. I always enjoyed them.
But you did them recreationally, I'm guessing, in your
Oh
20s.
yeah.
And
Oh
then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
this new invitation, was it like, hey, a bunch of people are getting together, we're just gonna laugh and have a good time, or was it supposed to be some sort of like more spiritual experience or whatever?
No, yeah, this was a San Pedro
A
ceremony.
ceremony, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, I don't know what that means, right? So I'm comfortable with the chemicals, but the context,
Yeah.
uh, and like the more he explained it, really, the more I'm like, not interested also doesn't make sense to me. And then I eventually said yes. And then now I'm like, what did I just say yes to? So right, like do what everyone else does and go to Google and I'm like San Pedro cactus, and like you start reading things like
Yeah.
ceremony, South
Yeah.
America, um, spiritual and like talk to God. And I'm like, oh man, like, okay.
It sounds like
So I go,
ayahuasca from what I know of ayahuasca.
I've never spent time with ayahuasca. Similar, also very different. Ayahuasca
Okay.
could be a real kick in the pants. San Pedro, while there could be some rougher points,
Mhm.
is usually very straight shooting and gentle.
More gentle. Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I showed up and I'm like still like trying to satisfy my curiosity. And so I'm like, hey, what brings you in today? And I remember very specifically a woman was like, well, like I had a chance to talk to God, so I came. I'm like, oh, okay, you read the same shit I did. Great. Um, and I got to tell you, that was a life-changing experience. That was amazing. Yeah. What it showed me was what was possible very quickly.
Okay.
So here's what I mean by that. Like meditation, plant medicine, energy, like it's all the same thing. Here's how I equate it. Like it's if you can imagine, it's all the Empire State Building. You can walk into the first floor. If you're a good meditator, maybe you'll get to level one, two, floor one, two, or three. Like you're a really good meditator, 10th floor. Plant medicine, like you're going right up to the observation deck, right? You're
Yeah.
getting into the elevator, you're up at the observation
Yeah.
deck, and you're like, how long am I going to be up here? You know, good luck, right? Like
Yeah.
you said yes, you're going to be up there for a while. You're going to see what there's to see, and then we're going to come get you. And
Yeah.
that's the agreement, right? You're not getting distracted. I mean, you could, but it's way harder to get distracted when you're on plant medicine. And people do, but I like to stay under a sheet for like 6 to 8 hours. I'm just under the sheet for a long time. And so it was a very, very interesting experience that I do about every 6 to 12 months. I spend time with that cactus. And I've
Okay.
been doing that since 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Always in a ceremonial context.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I've done it by myself a couple times. So like when
Yeah.
COVID hit,
Yeah.
I did it by myself. So it was me, way less ceremony, but just doing it. The intention was there to, I wasn't gonna treat it like I was at an amusement park. That was not what's happening.
Right.
But me and my quiet time by myself on the floor, yeah, I did that.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So like, what do you learn from animals when you're speaking with them? Actually, before I ask that one, firstly, like, do they have to be pets that understand humans for you to communicate, or have you communicated with like animals in the wild?
I have, yeah,
Captivity,
all the
like,
above. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. So when
interesting.
it first started showing up, it was really showing up for me, right? So like the random dog at Home Depot. So here was one. Like I was at Home Depot,
Okay. Okay.
person and her dog were
Yeah.
checking out, and I just like smiled at the dog, and then I
Okay.
started looking at whatever,
Yeah.
and then I got this like energetic pushback. It's like, so there's like that blend, that connection that happened,
Yeah.
right? That two beings acknowledging each
Yeah.
other,
Yeah.
right? So that was super cool. I was like, oh, this is how it's starting to show up now. Okay. Um, and and there were coyotes that visited us in the middle of the night. That was super trippy.
Okay.
Uh, and so here's this was cool. So in captivity, right? So we went to Mexico 2 Julys ago, and we were kids in the candy store. We went to Cabo, so we did all the touristy shit, all of it, right? Snorkeling on the boat, like going for the hikes, and all the things. And and there was a chance to swim a dolphin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was a little cross about it because I never liked animals in cages, and a dolphin in a tank is the equivalent of an
Yeah.
animal in a
Yeah.
cage,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
just didn't like it. And at the end of it, we decided to go.
Okay.
And so there's sort of like at SeaWorld, there's the deeper tank, and then the dolphins can sort of slide up on this like little ledge where there's an inch or two of water, whatever it is, right? But they slide up and they can slide back down, and it's big enough to have the dolphin up there, the length of the body, and wide enough to have people on it. Like it just circles the entire pool. And so the dolphin's up there, and the nose is pointing at the trainer. The tail is closer to the deep end of the pool, and on either side of the dolphin are three people over here and three people over here, right? And I'm at the tail end of the dolphin. I'm the third person back from the trainer. And I thought, well, let me see. Let me see if Liz wants to talk. The dolphin's name is Liz. And so I did just like quickly dropped in and just tried to find her, and I felt her show up. Oh, there she is. Okay. Just like at the dog at Home Depot. And and I got this overwhelming feeling of sad, right? And I'm like,
Mm,
I'm feeling guilty because of everything I just said, right?
hmm
But that was my narrative, right? Going back to what Adelita said, like just be the channel, be open to the information. What you get is what you get,
hmm
right? And when you bring your own story in there, you're not doing that, right?
hmm
It's like if I see you having a bad day and I'm like, you're having a bad day because you stubbed your toe and you woke up late and you're rushing. No, that was my
Yeah.
day,
No. Yeah. Yeah.
right? That was
Okay.
my day,
Yeah.
right? And I'm now putting that on you. So that's not how this is.
Right.
So, let that narrative escape. And I asked, why? Like, well, why are you feeling this way? And the only thing I got back was family. And then the connection was gone. So we have our time with Liz. We go swim with her, diving with her. And at the end of it, I looked at my wife and said, I need to validate something. So I went over to the trainers and said, had such a great time with Liz, really curious about her, mom and dad, siblings, like what's going on? Well, dad's off the planet. All right. Well, that doesn't feel like that's what it was. What about mom and siblings? Oh, no. Her mom's here and she has a sister. Oh, well, where are they in the pool? Oh, no. They're not in this pool. Well, where are they? You see over there? Uh-huh. Like beyond that little wall that's connected to this pool, there's
One.
another pool
Yeah.
over there.
She wanted to be in that pool.
Mom and sister in that pool.
Oh
Well,
man.
why are they separated?
Oh
Well,
my God.
right. So check this out. So they're separated because when mom had another baby, Liz still wanted attention from mom. And so she was quote unquote causing problems. So so we put mom and her sister into the other pool so mom could properly nurse her. Well, well, when was that? Well, that was 3 years ago. Well, how old is Liz? Liz is 5. So let me get this straight. When Liz was 2, and I don't know how long dolphins live, I couldn't tell you.
Uh-huh.
You took mom and her sister away from her, put her in the other pool, which is literally connected by a concrete wall. She knows they're there, right? They're right over there. I mean, I'd be sad too. Like it's
Yeah,
so
of course.
close,
Yeah.
and it's not like they're off the planet. Like there's no chance of ever seeing this person. Like they're right over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that explains family inside.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds like poor Liz was just the middle child, like
Right,
you
right, right, right.
had a younger sibling that took up all the attention.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fascinating. So on the topic of zoos, one of the things I wanted to ask you is like I I really struggle with zoos because I love animals and I want to see them. But like when I was in Vegas one time and I think it was the MGM Grand and I see these lions in a cage.
yeah,
I was like, man, this animal has evolved to be an apex predator. And like, who are we to put this animal in a cage? Like their body is built for the natural environment. And it's like, I feel so wrong about it. So how do you feel about zoos? And how do animals tell you how they feel about the zoo? And not necessarily like I know Liz didn't like the family separation, but like was there ever something mentioned about the zoo abuse? Do they like it? Whatever, right?
yeah. I've never had any conversations with them about that.
Okay.
I mean, and I have mixed reactions as well, mixed feelings as well, right?
Okay.
And I know that like here in San Diego, we have the zoo, which is a big thing for us here, and there's also SeaWorld. And I also know that there's a lot of good research that happens there. And when there's a seal or something like that that's injured on the beaches around here, folks from SeaWorld come here and they help that animal out, right? So there's a lot of service that does happen. Um, to go any deeper around that, I mean, people are going to have their opinions around it.
Mm,
The world's a complicated place, right? I mean, it just is.
mhm.
Um, you could have the same conversation around, well, like, is it a good idea to stay at a toxic job? No, it's not a good idea. It's a terrible idea. It does awful things to your mental health. Do you want to be homeless? Right? Like, well, you need a job. Like,
Right.
so get a new job, but at the same time, like, here's the situation that we got to deal with, right?
Yeah.
It's an imperfect situation.
Right.
So there's always a lesson in those imperfect situations. I don't know what
Yeah.
the lesson is for the animals in those situations, but
Yeah.
like there's an animal in at the zoo because someone decided to grow. I mean, I saw this earlier today. Someone decided that it would be a good idea to have a python that grew to be 13 feet in their apartment, right? And now that animal is in a zoo, right? Um, or someone got injured and now that animal's in a zoo or something like that. There's typically a reason for it.
Okay. 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 On the topic of snakes, is there a limitation? Well, firstly, is there a limitation to conversations in general? And what are the limitations like, say, species wise? Do they need to have a certain intelligence? Do they need to have a brain size? Like, you don't have a spider showing up and you're like, yo, not in here, please. You're gonna freak out the wife. Like a
Yeah.
spider isn't
I mean,
gonna, you know.
I'll give you the laundry list of the critters that I've
Yeah.
talked to,
Okay,
right?
okay.
So cats, dogs from people, like all the time. A lot of dogs, some cats. Horses have shown up. Um, the dolphin and dolphin Liz the dolphin, but also dolphins in the wild. And so here communication will show up with just energy like that dog at Home Depot, or there'll be a communication. So that's what this is the category that we're working in right now, right? Coyotes. Let's see. I mean, that covers a lot of them right there.
What's the kind of, how do you say it? Like smallest brained? animal you
that
would
I've had
say?
communication
Yeah,
with.
yeah.
I would probably a snake.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what you
Yeah.
and
So
Harry Potter have in common?
yeah, not quite like that. Not quite
Yeah,
like that.
okay.
Yeah, so
Parcel
there's
belts.
there's there's this little place that's around here that's a very special little place to go hiking. And this happened for years, this before the animals showed up properly. Every time I saw this, the path that a snake made in the dirt, I would see this implosion of energy. Like looking on top of it, it always looked like it was energy that was going inward. It was very strange. And every time I saw a snake trail, I saw that. Uh, the more recent ones, the fresher ones, the more active the energy was. Older was a little more subtle, but that always showed up for years. For years that showed up.
Hmm, that's fascinating. Um, what was I gonna say? Um, oh yeah, like elephants. Have you ever met an elephant?
Mm-mm.
No,
No, but I'll tell
because
you, going to the zoo is very different these days.
yeah, because I yeah can
Yeah.
imagine. Must be your favorite place.
I mean, it's a different experience,
Yeah,
right? Like, so imagine if you didn't have the sense of smell, right? Like, just imagine if you didn't for
yeah,
for all your life leading up to
yeah.
yesterday.
And then you had smell. Yeah,
And then you had smell. And then
yeah.
it's Friday night and you're walking around, right?
Oh
And
man.
there's just a list of restaurants that you're walking by,
Oh my gosh.
right? Like imagine that's the case. And so that's
Yeah.
sort of what the zoo feels like for me. Like I can feel them before I see them now.
Okay.
Like I'm walking down the stairs and I'm like, so I don't know who's down here, but it's like I can
Yeah.
feel their presence. Um, and that showed up. Like like strange things happen now. It's fun. So um there's this haunted house here in San Diego. I think it's called the Whaley House, the most haunted place in America, something like that. And we were there, I think it was last summer, and we're driving there, and I know we're getting close because of the GPS, but I don't know exactly where this house is. And as we pull closer, I can feel the house show up, and I'm like, it's got to be two doors down. Like I'm close enough. I know where it is. I don't care what the GPS says. Like I can't really see exactly where it is, but like it's got to be like it's. I think it's that building over there. And sure enough, it was that building over there. Like you could just feel the energy presence of it. It was super cool. A lot of fun.
That's awesome. I would love to, I've been to the jungle, the Colombian jungle.
Oh yeah.
I saw a monkey, I saw a tarantula. I was only there for 2 days, and that's like, I saw those things. I rode a donkey out of the jungle, and that was just a mind-blowing experience because we are trekking through this little donkey path out of the protected rainforest, and it
Yeah.
was like fully BBC Planet Earth, like mind otherworldly. Being from Canada, where it's like winter, you know, dominates the land and stuff. Mountains are cool, but like that kind of lush, all that life was just such a trip, and like that was sweet. So I feel like you'd be a really fun guy to go to a rainforest with.
Yeah. So we went to Costa Rica
Yeah.
in April, I guess it was.
Okay.
And su super trippy place.
Yeah.
Super tripping. Yeah, we went to Nosara. We went to this yoga retreat, my wife and I. And well, before we go there, she's like, I want to go to this retreat. Check it out. I'm like, we don't do yoga. Like, why are we going? I don't like, why do you want to go? We don't do yoga. And she showed me a picture of it. I was like, oh God, we should totally go, obviously. And she already made up her mind, right? I'm just catching up. And we spent about a week there. It was fantastic. And the howler monkeys are there, and like 5 in the morning, they're basically on top of where you're sleeping, and they just sound like a death metal singer. Like it's really it's a little alarming. And I didn't know what it was the first night. Like I had a visceral
Yeah.
reaction to it. It was
I've heard of
terrifying.
them actually. I heard of them when I went to Nicaragua. People were talking about the howler monkeys. Yeah.
Oh man, terrifying. Yeah, one walked right by me, uh, by the pool. It was super cool. He was like 2 feet away. but yeah, like I use this phrase like dirty monkey, like with my wife all the time. Like, like, whatever, you drop something on the floor and you're just like, ah, you little dirty monkey, right?
Yeah.
But after going to Costa Rica, like I just don't use that phrase all that often. Right? Because you get to see them in the wild. Like it's a
Yeah.
different relationship with them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. You don't
It's
want to be
cool.
specious or
Yeah,
something.
like it does feel a little bit like that. Like I'm
Yeah,
putting down the
it's
monkey,
so
like
funny.
in
Oh my God.
uh-uh.
Yeah, so like I guess it's rude to be like, oh, you dirty old dog, or
Yeah, right. Like who are we
Yeah,
to have
yeah.
that judgment
Yeah,
of them? Like
right, right, right. You're
have
associating
have you
something
have you
bad.
seen what we've done? Have you
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
species? Like,
Do you think the
man,
animals are ever being like, don't be a environment wrecking human now, Using
yeah,
human
I
as
I
like
don't know.
a human as a pejorative.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, and so that's part of the conversation, right? Like people
Yeah.
think like we talked about this yesterday when we connected. Like people are
Yeah.
gonna be like you're full of shit, me,
Yeah.
or or maybe there's something there, or absolutely I've always
Yeah.
known it, now I'm getting validation, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And for folks who are like, you know, I think it's like this whole thing is full of shit, and I think psychics are full of shit, and all
Yeah.
that is poo poo,
Yeah.
because humans are the bee's knees. Like that's sort of what it backs up into, right? Like we're we're
Right.
we're dominant, we're more intelligent, we are. Just because we have credit cards and thumbs, like look what we
Yeah.
created. All right,
Yeah. We're not
go
that
take a look.
special. We're not that special.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like everything around us, everything that's out there, uh, is something that can support us. Like,
Hmm.
do you feel better when you walk through the woods? You do.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you felt better when you went to South America. It was South America,
Yeah.
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 Colombia. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It's like you feel better when you're in those environments
Yeah.
versus metal and concrete and like it's
Absolutely. This has been confirmed empirically. Like this has been studied that urban environments are just better for you in every way, like mentally,
yeah.
physically,
Yeah,
you know.
and so people are like, okay, well maybe, but they don't have consciousness, really. Like that research is being done currently, right? And scientists are going, we think, um, right? And science is the pursuit of knowledge, and I'll tell you from my experience, they do. They
Yeah.
100% there's a
I mean,
consciousness there.
I mean, consciousness would be very foolish to look at it as this binary thing where it's on and on, right? Like we have maybe we're probably further, I would say humans are probably further along the spectrum of consciousness, like with more maybe self-awareness and sentience, right? But like I don't see why a dog is not falls under, not conscious, right? Like I love dogs. It's like when I see a dog, like the dog that you grew up with, like it deep in your soul that there's like a love there.
Yeah,
Like it's love, right?
yeah,
Like it, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it wasn't too
So
long ago that the argument was animals don't feel pain, right? Animals don't have feelings,
really,
right? For sure. Yeah,
oh
yeah.
man,
There's no problem solving skills there, right? I mean, that was common, we'll say, knowledge, thinking, belief system not too long ago, and I'm sure some people still think that. And what has that afforded humans to do? Treat animals poorly,
exactly. Yeah,
right? And so now, if you had to change your thinking and think that, well, everything potentially has consciousness, right? The animals have consciousness, the trees out there, the rivers, the streams, the oceans, everything has a consciousness. And anything with a life force has a consciousness. Because we sort of think ourselves as we're this little circle called us in it. And
yeah,
there's this bigger circle called nature, right? And so we go to nature. You should get out into nature more, Shay. You'll feel better, right? Well, what if we were just that little circle and just move it into the bigger circle, and we're just part of it?
right,
The relationship changes, right?
right,
And so now we treat things differently. Now there's a different respect for things
yeah.
versus everything we extract value out of it and have no feelings about it. And that sounds really selfish.
Yeah, definitely. It fascinates me that consciousness, for all the tech and all of our progress and civilizational achievements, we go to the moon, right? But like we can't explain consciousness. We can't define it. It doesn't even fit in like a model of like space-time physics, right? Like,
Where does it exist? No one
yeah,
can give you a good
you
answer.
can't explain consciousness, and
Mm-mm.
it, like that's a beautiful mystery of life. In fact, they say the brain is more of we know less about the brain than the known universe. How like that is wild to me, you know?
Yeah. Right.
So,
And then you spend time with plant medicine, right? Or acid,
mhm.
right? And that's like another view into consciousness and what's possible.
I, I'm talking to you today because I have had small glimpses of that. So in my own experience, I was a recreational, user. Like your buddies, you go camping, mushrooms, we just laugh, whatever, right? But
Yeah.
there's been moments, and there was one in Nicaragua where it was like I am looking at this volcano, and if without LSD, it's like I can look at that volcano and say, this is such a beautiful thing. But when with the acid, it's like I am feeling the beauty of that, like how many millions of years of time that went into shaping this
Yeah.
insanely
Different.
beautiful structure that I get to like I'm feeling its whole kind of like geological forces over like millions of years, like all coalescing into this one kind of image going through my mind, and I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
Right. And that was a much is like different experience from just like I'm just walking along and I'm visiting and like, oh, that's so pretty, like, and
Yeah.
that really that leaves a much bigger impact on me than just like sightseeing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Like how would you feel if you got an email from a nonprofit that said, please help us because this volcano is in danger, like it's
Oh my
blowing up,
God. Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like you would feel an emotional tug towards it,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, right. And
Absolutely.
so and so imagine if you could tap into that state that you were in on acid with the volcano
Yes,
without the acid,
absolutely. And
and
when
then
you
have that connection with the
yeah,
volcano without the acid. And that's what happens when I'm talking to the animals.
that is really cool. Does meditation like allow that? Like a
So
meditative
yeah,
state sort of
let's
thing?
talk about it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So psychedelics specifically, my go-to is San Pedro. I know there's out LSD and there's
Yeah.
mushrooms are like the cool kid, and we talked about that
Yeah.
this the other day. Like everyone's talking about
Yeah, yeah.
mushrooms.
Biggest comeback of all time.
Yeah, yeah,
Mushrooms.
yeah. Ayahuasca is sort of like, it's certainly a big part of the conversation as well. But San Pedro is my go-to. And what it's shown me easily is like you can just drop into the space, very little effort to stay in the space. Um, and it shows you what's possible very, very quickly. And over time, at least for me, I've learned like I can create, I have a relationship with that cactus. I have a relationship with whoever is, there's a guide that shows up or guides that show up that usher you through the time that you're spending time with this cactus. Um, and I can say that because I've had conversations with the consciousness of whatever's behind the cactus, and they have talked in the sense of like we have done this thing before. Like, oh, okay, so you guys or some variation of you guys have been working through me every time on with the cactus. Okay, cool. So that was the big benefit of San Pedro is what's possible and the ease of connection. But going back to that Empire State Building, right? It's all the same thing. It's all levels of consciousness in that building. And so meditation is without a doubt, if you can get good at it, and good is definition of good is do it consistently in the same spot for 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. Start where it's comfortable. But my practice with the like with my practice with the animals, the training is the meditation during the day every day. And then I have my quote unquote office hours where I communicate with the animals, then I debrief with the humans. But it's because of the meditation that I'm able to get into that space, like you're able to get into that space the LSD, like I was able to get still am with the cactus, right? You can just easily access it, but it's a muscle. You work that muscle, right? You can get into that space. So without a doubt, you can do it.
That's cool.
100%. Yeah. So I think I could have done this. I know I could have done this with the animals without the cactus. Again, that showed me what was
Yeah.
possible. So
Right.
super cool, right?
It just
But I
broke
could not have,
down the barriers. Yeah.
yeah, but I could not have done this without the meditation. And so there is, like, how'd you get there and the benefits of things. And also like there's a lot of people doing psychedelics these days without proper integration. Like I went to the space, I have the thing, I got the message, now I'll go back to my messy decisions.
Yeah.
Great, right?
Yeah.
Or I swapped out alcohol, but here's what I do now. I microdose or take mushrooms every day of the week. Well,
Yeah.
okay, great. Okay.
Right.
Not a great thing, right? So
Right.
um the more we can take what we learn in these spaces and apply it to our daily lives, that's really the integration, or else we're just kids in a candy store having fun. Which nothing wrong with having fun, but these are sacred medicines. I mean, there's something more to be had here. This is the evolution of the consciousness that people are talking about. So this is the tool to do that. Meditation is the tool to do that.
Yeah.
Sort of a waste to just have it as a party drug.
Right. 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 Have you heard of the stoned ape theory? Surely
I
you have.
have.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I love thinking about that. It's funny. There's no evidence for it, but it definitely fills in some of the it's a good hypothesis to fill in some of the gaps of the evolutionary theory,
Sure. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and animals. I just sent this. I'll send it to you later. But there's
Okay.
there's an article about animals and psychedelics from like 2010, and how like each there's maybe like five animals in this article, and they all like to have their own specific type of psychedelic. It's super
Oh
fun.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's cool.
Cool. So back to like say Mexico, you're going on a retreat because you brought
Mhm.
up like, you know, how this does look to other people. And I wanted to ask like, so it's like, how quickly would you tell a stranger that you do this? You know? Because
Uh,
you're
yeah,
aware that this someone who's never heard of this is just gonna be like, what the hell, man? You know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was pretty guarded with it for a while,
Yeah,
and now it's more of a discernment of is this the right place for the conversation.
right.
So yeah, so it sort of depends,
Yeah.
right? So like for example, I'm going up to where is it? It's in Northern California, Lake Tahoe, and at the end of the month for a little retreat, and it's at the tail end of and part of this holistic veterinary conference that's happening. And I was looking at the agenda, and on the last day there's animal communication that's happening at this conference. Super cool. Like so, vets uh, are studying in this, at least the holistic ones, have the opportunity to study animal communication. So great. So like that's the place I'm going to go to and meet folks who are potentially open to this conversation, right? Like if you're treating animals with aromatherapy, this is part of that conversation, right? Because it's just a different way of approaching things, this holistic view versus here's a pill. There you go, have a pill. And let's treat the symptoms. Let's not treat the problems, right?
Yeah,
So it's really a matter of is this the right place for the conversation?
right. That's so there's like applications with this, right? I was gonna ask about like veterinary. Like I could see like a vet like when they're dealing with a problem with an animal, it's like this would be extremely useful for them, right? To like,
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
you know, other like biologists who have animals in their care, you know, I wonder if they would want to make use of this.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is certainly for folks out there like um and I've had some folks show up like this. This is certainly not a replacement for veterinary care.
No, of
Absolutely
course not.
not.
No, no, no.
Yeah, yeah, not even little.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean that like a physical ailment won't show up when I'm talking with the animal. It has, and other things have resulted from that. So great. It helps people get to the vet who are maybe resistant to going. And this was the conversation I just had with someone in the past couple of weeks. And frequently, here's the thing that happens. Folks will come to me with like this 3D problem with their animal. And then the conversation will sort of address that, but the conversation very quickly shifts into the person and what's going on. And
Yeah.
here's why. And or here's an example of it. So I guess it was last January or so, a woman shows up and I ask people to fill out a form. Give me your first name, last name, name of the animal, age of the animal, or like really basic information. Send me a picture, and then the promise is I'm going to talk to the animal, and then I'm going to debrief with you. And also I asked people for three questions, and their questions were something like, "Can you have this? Can you have my dog stop biting people? My dog's been biting people for a long time. Can you talk to them and tell them not to do that?"
Okay.
Like I can't tell you, Shay, to
How
don't do
often you get that? Yeah.
or to do a thing, right? Like it's the same
Yeah.
case with the animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
get to choose.
Of course. They're
Uh,
agents. Yeah.
right. Yeah. So I can promise that I will ask the question,
Yeah.
but I can't make a guarantee that they're gonna answer the question or that their
Yeah.
behavior will change. But like this is a starting point. So let's
Yeah.
let's let's do this thing. Right. So I it's a little chihuahua. So I tune into the little chihuahua. And the first thing the chihuahua says is, you got to talk to her about her job. Yeah, and so I asked, well, why? Because that's what has to change. All right. So I get the young lady on the line. She says, "Did you talk to my animal?" Mm-hmm. "Did you tell him to stop biting people?" Mm-mm. "Well, what'd you talk about?" "Well, what do you do for a living?" "I'm out of work." "You're not out of work." What are you doing?" "Well, I'm driving." "What does that mean?" Well, I drive for Uber. I drive some limousines. How's that working out?" "Well, I have a lot of spinal issues. My doctor says I shouldn't be driving. I should not have this work. This shouldn't be how I make a living." "Okay. Well, what happens?" "Well, I get banged up in like an hour or two just driving around. My back is terribly out of whack. It's very painful." "Well, here's what your dog said about your job. Your job is what has to change." And so now, similar to what like the Empire Strikes, the Return of the Jedi vision that I got, like that was the piece of information that led to a bigger conversation. So this was the piece of information that led to a bigger conversation, right?
Hmm.
And so in this case, now here's one of the tactics animal use to communicate with us. They use a mirroring or modeling behavior. So like my little boy cat, every night between 7 and 8 o'clock at night, he's either crying upstairs or he's patiently waiting downstairs for me to come play with him because I don't have the best relationship with his computer. I'll grind too long. I'll be on it too long. And his lesson for me is break out of your garbage, like stop doing things that are not productive and come and play.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what he does for me. So that's a modeling behavior he gives me. With this
Okay.
young lady, there is a mirroring behavior, right? Like you're angry about a thing. I'll be angry about a thing too. Here's how I express anger. I bite people, right? Where this lady was just mad. She
Yeah.
was just sort of mad.
The mirroring thing is like definitely, I think we all know this intuitively. Like happened very recently. Like dogs do this a lot, right? Like I was in an elevator and I see the dog and I'm like, it's a dog in an elevator. I want to like say hello to the dog, but I went down to say hello and the dog pulled back. And then I noticed the owner and I look at the owner and the owner is someone who just did not want to acknowledge, like with eye contact, no smile, just stared straight ahead. I'm
Yeah.
like, that dog just learned from the owner to be cold and fearful of humans. Like I can tell, I can see that this person doesn't want to interact with people, doesn't like people, probably doesn't trust them.
Yeah.
And then the dog, you know, like there's like some kind of like they somehow mirror human energy, right? It's
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. And so here's the other thing, like that may have been going on, or like you could have come in a little too hot with
Oh,
your
and
energy forward.
one other thing I need to get out there while I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
I saw a dog, and I had this conversation many times. I lived with a guy briefly, who was very mentally ill. His mental health was in shambles.
Hmm.
His dog was only like 2 or 3 years old. This should be like a happy, active dog. The dog was acting like it was like near the end of its life because
Yeah,
the dog took on his depression with him.
totally. Absolutely.
I
Yeah. I mean,
like I told people
yeah.
this. I've told this story multiple times, you know?
Yeah. It's a thing.
It
Yeah.
is a
I mean,
thing.
it's totally
Like,
a thing.
so
I
this
mean,
is
how many
like
times?
some of these experiences make me like fully believe some of the like all this stuff that you're talking about, you know? So
Yeah. I mean, you're seeing it out there. I mean,
yeah.
the way I phrase it with folks is like, how many times have you heard that my dog is so lazy while he sits on the couch all day while I play
Yeah.
video games,
You're just
right?
saying
Like,
I'm lazy. That's literally all you're saying is I'm lazy. You know?
right, right.
Like the
Like
dog
your
doesn't want to
dog is
walk.
just,
No, you don't want to walk.
that's right. Yeah,
You
your dog
know?
is just doing what you're doing. It's just mirroring what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
So I want to get into some specifics on like memorable experience. I love the anecdotes that you have with them, right? So like,
yeah,
tell me about some memorable experiences and like one of the things I was bringing up with the elephant that I didn't get to was like in Thailand, the first time I met an elephant, in Thailand, I'm wearing an elephant shirt, by the way, just had to point that out, but my favorite shirt from Cambodia. When I went to Thailand, and I went to an elephant like camp or whatever they're called there. And the I will never forget the exact moment the elephant looked me in the eye because I immediately felt like there's a the same eye level of eye contact that you have only with humans, right?
hmm
Like a dog, like I'm not sure that they're actually they know to make eye contact, but they're not, I don't know if that they're just looking at you in the right direction versus an elephant is making eye contact person to person. And I felt that. And I felt like I was meeting an elephant, right? Like,
yeah,
and it would be fascinating to be able to, go
yeah,
ask what's going on inside of their minds,
yeah. I mean,
And
I feel
so,
like I feel like we like just totally projecting, but like the bigger the animal, the bigger the thing. When we look at them in the eyes or they look at us in the eyes, the more that we feel like there's a connection there.
yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So more like some memorable experiences you have, like what are some ones that stand out, you know?
Yeah, I mean, let's stick with the mirroring modeling behavior, right?
Okay.
Because this is frequently like what happens when I'm talking with folks. Right? So,
Yeah.
there's a woman who showed up and she said my dog doesn't go out at night, doesn't like to go outside at night to go do its business before we go to sleep. So I want to talk to you about that and some other things as well. And so we're talking, and I said, "Well, help me understand. Like, what happens? Walk me through what goes on at night." Okay. Well, it's 9 o'clock at night. I get the dog. Dog's not on a leash. I walk the dog up to the door. You open the door, and I tell the dog to go outside to do the business. And then what happens? The dog sits there and looks at me. Okay. Well, how do you feel about going outside? Oh, I think it's scary. Hmm. But it's okay for the dog. Well, yeah, because you can go out there, run out, pee on the bush, and run back in. Okay. So let's talk about communication with the animal. So there's three things that are very important here when and she's taking notes. You need to be really clear with your words. You're very clear with what you're saying. Go outside and go pee. We're going to bed. Okay. And you need to visualize that. So for example, different story. Like if I yell at my little boy cat to get off the coffee table and to get onto the couch, that's confusing. I may be seeing coffee table, envisioning coffee table or the couch. It's not consistent with what I'm saying, right? So you got to be clear with what you're saying and see what you're saying, so it's clear. And then the third piece, which is what she had, is you got to feel what you're saying. And so she's saying go outside. She's obviously opening up the door, saying go outside. It's like right over there. So she's visualizing that. But on the inside, she's going, it's dangerous out there. I'm afraid to go out there. And the dog's like, 2 out of 3, not a pass. Right? Doesn't work. Mm-mm. Nope.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
So,
So,
right.
yeah.
So like, well, how do I get the dog to go outside? You need to be okay. You need to be okay with going outside. And so now we get into a conversation of, well, what are the things that you're currently not doing because fear is holding you back?
Hmm.
Right. So now it turns into this different conversation. Like, oh man, really? Like I had no idea this was going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen either, but this is what showed
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like, do you have to sometimes get into like therapy type of stuff where you're like, look, like you're it must happen often where you're like start touching on something personal and you're like, this is not what I'm here for or whatever, right? Like that must happen frequently, right? Because people use animals and pets to fill a void, right? And like
Yeah.
maybe not properly deal with something going on, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, they could be super supportive, right? They could be super supportive or like anything else that's available to us, drugs, alcohol, TV. We could use them as a crutch,
yeah,
right? And not address that thing that needs addressing.
right, right.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, because that dog I lived with who was depressed, she was eating garbage
Oh
all the
man.
time, you know? And like it wasn't necessary. She had food out, I think. She just liked garbage. And I always wondered like what led to that behavior, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Interesting. Yeah. So was this person putting something in their body that was bad for them?
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
a
So
lot of
like
that.
you can start to see very quickly,
Yeah.
yeah, the mirroring and modeling.
Right, right.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
I mean, sometimes talking with folks that gets emotional around animals that have passed,
Hmm.
right? Because
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
there,
Can you speak with animals that have passed?
yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah, yeah. That
Damn.
was fun when it started to show up. Yeah,
Oh
it
man.
was with it started happening, like all these things started happening with me and then with other people. So
Okay.
it was with Chucky, and I was like, well, can you bring in other living cat Chucky? Can you bring in the other cats? And I named the other cats. And then I forgot. I sort of forgot that I asked him to do this. And so like a week goes by and I'm trying to find Chucky and I see this white cat and I'm like, that's Henry. Like I want to talk to Chucky. And like I just wasn't picking up what I actually requested. It was funny. And then like the next day I heard orange and white tabby. And I'm like, orange and white tabby. Well, that was the other cat that we had when Henry was around. And so like then I started to go, oh shit, like I'm starting to get animals that have passed showing up. So great, okay. And then I was talking to a guy and I said, your animals show me like you walking away with this woman. Like what's going on? What's your cat showing me this? And he goes, that was a long time ago. I said, well, how long was it? It was like 25 years ago. It's like, is your cat on the planet or is not your cat not on the oh no, she died like whatever, 15 years ago or whatever it was. Oh, okay. Well, so that was the first time in a session that it came up. I don't ask people and they sometimes they don't tell me. Um, and then I was like, oh, that's why it felt a little funny and it was a little harder to track. So like talking with animals who have passed, it has a different feel to it. So imagine like balloons tied to like a mailbox. And like they're sort of blown in the wind a little bit. Like they feel a little bit like that. So I don't know if there's a better way to explain it, but that's how they feel to me. Like it's like you sort of have to keep on tracking them a little bit. Um, but they communicate just the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, do you try to be careful with um like the like what do you say it like how do you say it like trying not to like cast around looking for things, you know what I mean? Because like people might
Yeah.
like the critique of like psychic might be like you might go see a psychic and they're gonna be like something bad happened to you in your past and it's like oh my god like literally everyone has had something
Yeah.
bad happen in their
Everyone
past,
can
right?
identify with that.
And
Yeah.
then you say that, and then the person just fills it in, right? Are you like trying to be aware of that or careful with that
Yeah.
sort of thing? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of fishy, right? Fishing type of
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not helpful for anyone.
Okay.
And so this is why I really enjoy when those 3D things show up,
Yeah.
right? Like I get
Like the Wheel of
such this
Fortune, the Wheel of Fortune, that's like super
totally.
specific, right?
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
couldn't guess that, like not in a million years, right? Like,
Like why, yeah, why would I randomly say something about a game show,
yeah.
right? And like
Like
I was
kind of an
talking,
obscure one too.
it's so, yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And
like everyone watches shows, like, but you didn't say Game of Thrones, like you didn't say like all
right.
the big
Right.
ones, right? Like
Right.
that's an obscure one, and the chances of that actually landing were quite low, right? So like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, there's like as a the giver of the information, I give whatever I get. I mean, it's like a translator, and like when
yeah,
if you see like a translator in court, like they're taking whatever language and translating it into
yeah,
the other language,
yeah,
and they're not adding words, they're not
yeah,
changing context as much as
yeah,
possible, right? Because sometimes culturally, there's something
yeah,
you sort of need to interpret every once in a
right,
while,
right,
but they're just going, person said X,
yeah.
I'm going to deliver X in different language, right? So that's how I see my role.
Right. So there is a translation effect. There is something I was wanting to get
Well,
into that. Yeah.
I mean, a little bit,
Yeah.
but then I'll say, I think it is this versus what I saw was, or the message is, right? Because sometimes to deliver the details behind the thing doesn't really matter. It's about the thing that's being delivered, right? So like it doesn't really matter. Like Liz and the dolphin, like she's sad about her family. Well, what did
Yeah.
you hear? Right? Like, well, I mean, the details may be interesting for some people, but when it comes down to it, it's sad about my family,
Yeah.
right? And so that's typically how the information gets delivered. Sometimes it's I saw a thing and because I'm
Yeah.
not quite sure. Like I was talking to a woman uh a couple weeks ago, and I was like, "Do you go hiking where there's like did oh, it was a past dog." And I said, "Did you used to go hiking with your dog?" Yeah. Was there honeysuckle somewhere? Yeah. And I was like, "Okay, so I heard honeysuckle, so I don't know what that's about." And she was just like, "Oh, okay, all right." And then later she texted me and she said, "I look up the spiritual meaning of honeysuckle," and like it was spot on, right? And so I was trying to give it context around like I'm not sure what it was. Was it this or was it not? But I gave you what I heard because I didn't really know what it was about. So that'll happen sometimes. Um, and so here's another 3D, also no context. It was last week. I'm talking to a woman about a couple different cats, and I heard sunflower seeds. I'm like, what the like what's a cat doing with sunflower seeds? Like are they eating like are they playing with them, eating them? Like I
Yeah.
don't know. But all I said was, okay, so sunflower seeds. Like what are you doing? What's going on with sunflower seeds? And she goes, well, um, sunflower seeds and a bunch of other seeds are in the bird feeder over here and right outside this big window, and the cats come up and watch the birds eating from the window. So that's why sunflower seeds are part of this cat's life. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense now, right? But I had no idea what sunflower seeds were. So you just have to say it.
Okay. Gotcha. That's cool. Uh, what else? Yeah, like so I would wonder what my family dog would have to say to you because he's getting older and grumpier and
Hmm.
he's getting more bitey as the years go go
Oh,
on,
interesting. Yeah.
So yeah. Huh. I also wonder what like a beaver would say because beaver's like my favorite animal. They're just
Oh, that's
busy.
your favorite animal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I
Have
have
you
one tattooed on me actually.
is that right? Oh,
Yeah.
funny. Have you ever why is that? Why is beaver a favorite animal for you?
Um, I love the idea of like how they're like kind of the only engineers of the environment. They're actually the only animal that engineers their environment outside of the surrounding environment outside of like humans, right? Meaning
Yeah.
engineer not just building a habitat. Like they'll go upstream and block like full on streams and like bodies of water, right? And they just like their protection is just like creating that moat around, and
Yeah.
They're extremely cute too. They are extremely baby beavers and extremely cute. And they're not like violent, just like chill,
Yeah, they're
big
called.
rodents, So
Have you ever? I'm gonna find it now. Have you ever heard of Ted Andrews? Does that name mean
no,
anything to you?
no.
Yeah, let me get the title. This will probably be helpful for some folks here. He wrote a Yeah, there it is. So he wrote a book. His name is Ted Andrews, and he wrote a book called Animals Speak: The Spiritual and Magical something Magical Powers of Creatures Great and Maybe Small. Um, but he goes into a bunch of meaning around animals and what that means for you. Like some animals just like they show up, right? So there's a difference. Like some people are gonna be like, oh my God, I saw a thing cross my path. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But sometimes like when you feel a connection with an animal, when you see an animal like in your mind's eye, like when like, why am I always thinking about whatever animal? Like
Yeah.
there's a difference between animals doing their thing and visitations and messaging,
Yeah.
right? Like not every showing up is a visitation and messaging, but when it does, like it's really helpful to sort of check in, give a pause, see what's going on,
Yeah.
right? And so like animals, like in hindsight, like the animal thing, like oh, like they were showing up for a while in one way or another. So like before I started my consultancy, which was in 2019, I had a ton of like red-tailed hawks showing up. I had a ton of feathers showing up, and like I'm having this deliberation with myself as I'm driving around one day about leaving my job and starting this consultancy, and this red tail just flies right in front of the car. Like this was just happening all the time. Uh and so like bigger birds, like their viewpoint is higher, like higher perspective, right? Like reaching big goals, that type of thing. And even the day of when I went to go quit, and give notice, I'm walking into the office and there's this feather that's pointing into the office, going right towards the door. It's just pointing into the door. So like feathers were showing up, birds were showing up quite a bit for me. It's interesting various ways that animals show up.
Yeah.
But the book is super helpful.
I was just pulling up some photos. This is a great time to tell this story. So, a few years ago, so I have like a roughly an animal themed sleeve here, my tattoos. So like
Hmm. You got an
chameleon,
octopus, is that what that is?
octopus. These tigers are Sakyan tattoo from Thailand, a nautilus, and there's a jaguar up here. I got this in Colombia. Now this one though, let me try and get the angle. Okay. C- Can you see the
Is that a frog?
Yeah, it's like a toad.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason why I got that on my arm was because a few years ago I was working on my sleeve with my friend and I went to her place and we discussed like some ideas what we're gonna do and we're just kind of like, you know, um brainstorming ideas. Didn't fully know. And then I went home and I was staying at my parents' place in the basement at the time. And I went to bed with this weird thumping noise on the window.
Hmm.
Okay. And I heard the thumping noise. I wasn't sure what it was. I fell asleep. I woke up, the thumping noise is still there. So I look out the window. What do I see? So I went outside, I got the toad, and he was stuck in the windowsill. He was stuck in the window, like in the basement, where the
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I got the toad, I picked him up and like let him back in the forest. And then I had a photo. I took a photo because I was like, I knew right away this was like meant something. And then I got that toad tattooed on my
That's
and
awesome.
like he was looking through the window, like almost with his arm up, like literally like I don't know if
Yeah,
this is my
asking for
human
help.
projection, but like, hey, I need a hand here. Like, hey, bud,
Uh-huh.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they
that's
do that. I mean, there's a
yeah.
ton of videos that I've seen online of like critters asking for help.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
That's
cool.
funny.
That's
So,
that's a hoot.
maybe that's a good place to leave it. Yeah. Anything else you want to say? I really appreciate you coming on. Like this was very enjoyable. I feel like I learned something new, and I like the esoteric kind of stuff, there's really so much we don't know still,
Yeah.
about consciousness, the natural world, everything, So I'm glad we got to explore one of those topics with someone who's actually like in it doing the thing.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. Yeah, it's a ton of
Yeah,
fun. I mean,
absolutely.
if anyone wants to get a reading, they can go to mycatschooledme.com.
Okay.
They can follow me on Instagram if they wanted to,
Okay.
which is mycatschooled me. It's sometimes I put things up there.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, for anyone who's ever had an experience of, and like I knew animals could do this thing,
Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
or that phone call text that we were talking about at the top of our time.
Yeah.
Um, like dive into a meditation, get a
Yeah.
meditation practice, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I have a little spot that I use, where I cultivated the spot, and it's every day, mostly every day, around 7 o'clock in the morning. I'll go there for 5, 10, 20 minutes, whatever it is, and just do a meditation. That changes everything.
Yeah.
That's the door.
That's cool.
Hmm.
Thank you so much, Nick. This was absolutely awesome.
Thank you, Shay. Super
All
cool.
right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Death Taxes Acid. This is my first foray into the arcane, and I'm grateful for Nick sharing his experience. I encourage anyone who is interested to contact Nick for an animal communication session with your pet or whoever. Cheers.